Salam and peace. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and a whole lot of social media, and pretty soon on Apple TV as well. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and we started this television, because we need to have conversations in which we can really understand each other. And it's just amazing. One of the things which a whole lot of people don't even want to understand, and a whole lot of those people are sitting in Congress, and they keep passing resolutions and things like that on the issue of the freedom of Palestinians. And they consider that to be a very complex issue. A whole lot of media wants to remain silent. And what is the complexity? Palestinian would like to be equal citizens with Israelis, Muslims and Christians and Jews. They all have Holy Land in a place where they all like to be equal citizens. Is it too much to be asked? Is it democratic to ask that question? Is it illegal to ask that question? Is it illegal to campaign through peaceful means to force Israel to accept a basic democratic principle? Let's all human beings be equal. So many people in Israel are dual citizens in the United States. In the United States, we are all equal citizens. We are all equal in the eyes of law. We work with each other. We have interfaith gatherings. We support each other. If Jewish cemetery is, somebody puts the swastika and all that, Muslim community raises money for it. If mosque is burned down, Jewish people give keys of their synagogue for Muslim to worship there. Christians stand up in solidarity. Why we cannot replicate the beauties of America in Israel? That's all Palestinians are asking, Christians and all that, and a whole lot of peacemaking Jews are asking the same thing. But this democratic principle are supported by laws, international laws, and all sort of instruments, human rights declarations, and the United Nations Charter, and Magnitsky Act, and there are a whole lot of instrumentation to ensure that people are fair to each other. People are just to each other. But do these international laws work for Palestinians, or they just work for some sort of people? Who is going to decide all of these things? And that is an important conversation, don't you think? Just to be equal in the eyes of law, instead of taking the worst part of America, in which committed genocide against the native people, and have a history of slavery and lynching of Black people and harassing mothers by snatching away their children on the southern border as it takes place with Latinos. Can all of that be moved away from America? And instead of America copying these horrible things and Israel applying those to Palestinian? But some of the people are saying actually it's the Israeli police and what type of systems they have are being taught in the United States. In US, we have freedom of speech to say that, but in UK, a major, second probably most important leader of the Labour Party said exactly the same thing, which is all over the media also, and she was kicked out of the Labour Party. Does she have any legal protection in this area? To discuss all of that is somebody who is just simply amazing. He is Jonathan Kuttab. And Jonathan Kuttab, welcome to Muslim Network TV, Jonathan.
Thank you. Salam alaikum.
Jonathan Kuttab, wa alaikum salam, peace be with you, is a Palestinian attorney and a human rights activist. He grew up in Jerusalem, studied and worked in the United States as attorney. He's member of the Bar Association of New York, Israel, and Palestine. He has done a whole lot of human rights work, including establishing a human rights organization for based among the Palestinian Christian, Al-Haq. And he also established, was founding member of the Mandela Institute for Palestinian prisoners, and is the chairman of the board Holy Land Trust, is active in many civil society organizations in Palestine and internationally. Well, welcome to Radio Islam.
Thank you.
I just told you welcome to Radio Islam, which is defunct. I used to host that for 15 years. It's a daily show. Now it has merged to Muslim Network TV, and suddenly that memory popped up. Do you have memories of Jerusalem popping up in your head sometime?
All the time. All the time.
Tell me, are Arabs and Jews who are Israeli citizens, they're equal in the eyes of Israeli laws?
Not really, because Israel was created to be a Jewish state. And since its founding, it's made it very clear that it's there to serve Jews. So there are some rights given to Arab citizens in Israel, but by law, the law says that Israel is a state of the Jews. And recently, they even passed a constitutional type of law, a basic law that says only Jews have the right of self-determination in the state of Israel. Those who call for Israel to be a state for all its citizens have been treated as almost traitors. So at its very essence, Israel tries to be a Jewish state, a state of the Jewish people. So it's hard.
Is there any clause in the Israeli constitution which says all citizens of Israel have equal rights in Israel?
No, Israel does not have a constitution. It has a number of what's called basic laws, which have constitutional value. And these laws make it clear that it's a Jewish state and that only the Jews have the right of self-determination. See, Israel lives in a dilemma or a dichotomy. They try to be democratic. They try to be Western. They try to speak the language of equality, but at the same time, they speak about exclusivity and specificity. They want to be a Jewish state. They want to serve the Jews everywhere. So they always treat non-Jews, Arabs, as a problem. Demographically, they're a problem. Politically, they're a problem. Culturally, they're a problem. They want to give them some equality, but they don't want them to be equal.
So what is that some equality which is granted? Is it enshrined in laws or in practice?
Well, on some issues, there is some equality. For example, if you go fast on the road, if you speed up, you will be stopped and we will be given a ticket, whether you're a Jew or an Arab. More often than not, you will be treated equally.
So equality in giving tickets.
Well,
I thought if you're an Arab, you will not be given a ticket.
Not full equality, because in courts, even though in theory you're equal, you don't get the same punishment as a Jewish person. But this inequality appears especially when we're talking about land, when we're talking about positions in government, when we're talking about building permits, zoning, services. On many of these issues, the discrimination is clear and sometimes it's written in the law. But on civil matters, if you write a check and you owe me some money, the court may treat you the same as they would treat a Jewish person.
You being a lawyer and serving in 3 different countries, Israel, Palestine, and New York. Is New York a country? I think it should become a country. Anyway, so serving in 3 different countries, tell me, is there a possibility of equality when not all are equal? I mean, you say it's equality in some areas. Does a concept of equality tolerates inequalities in itself? I mean,
Well,
the reason that I'm asking you this question,
yes,
recently an American journalist went to India and it asked a person who is a PhD from Harvard University, and he regularly comes every year to teach at Harvard, and he is a intellectual who is in the Indian Parliament, and a big name, Swami Subramaniam. And when she says that Indian Constitution have this clause that all citizens are equal, he responded, but Muslims, this is for Constitution is talking about equality of the equals. Muslims are not equal.
yes. That's actually a very good question,
Well,
because
you are in a very good television program here.
part of the essence of law is equality. Law means rules, means regulations. By definition, there is an element of equality. When there is inequality in the law, and it happens, it is called apartheid. When the law itself provides different rights for different groups of people, it's called apartheid. Part of my work as human rights lawyer is to bring out the inequality, the injustice in the law itself. So the nature of law, as I said, leans towards equality. And when law does not provide for equality, it accuses and condemns itself. It appears to everyone. This was the nature of apartheid. That's why South Africa was viewed as an illegitimate country, because by law it was giving different rights to different categories of people. This is also the problem with Israel. It pretends to be a democracy, it pretends to have equality, but yet it says when you're Jewish, it's separate, it's different, you're better, you're superior, you have greater rights in the law. I think it's a basic imperfection. It's a basic problem for the state of Israel, which it will have to face sooner or later.
So tell me this: since you are a lawyer in the Israeli courts, have you taken any case to question, which somehow connects the inequality in Israel? That is, Arabs are citizens. They probably hold the passport of Israel, except they are not equal to the Jewish citizens. So both citizenships are somewhat different. Has anybody, especially you, since you practice law there, have filed any case to question and debate? And what was the response of the courts?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And in fact, it's even worse than that, because the Israelis have divided the Palestinian people into different categories. There are Israeli citizens who have a passport. There are East Jerusalem people who don't have a passport. They're residents, but they are not citizens. Then there are people in the West Bank who have, again, a separate category. And then people in Gaza who are under continue in siege, and there are Palestinians who are outside who have no rights under Israeli law whatsoever.
So let me help clarify for myself and our people who are watching. So all the people who are in Israel before 1967 are citizens?
Yes.
Okay. So everyone who Israel occupied after 67 are non-citizens.
Correct.
Okay. So, but within those non-citizens, there are people like you who were from Jerusalem. Were you in East Jerusalem or West Jerusalem?
East Jerusalem.
East Jerusalem. So you will. So you were not citizens then.
Correct.
Okay. So when you took this case to Israeli court, what happened, and what was the case to begin with? That's very interesting.
It was the case of Mubarak Awad versus the state of Israel. Mubarak Awad is an East Jerusalemite like myself. He came to the United States. He went back and was living in Jerusalem, and he was a great believer in nonviolence. And so he was carrying out many nonviolent activities. The Israelis arrested him and they wanted to deport him. They say, you don't belong here, you're just a tourist. And so the Israeli High Court had to figure out what is the status of East Jerusalemites. Because Israel annexed Jerusalem, but it did not grant them citizens. So what is their status under the law? And then I took that case all the way to the Israeli High Court. And the High Court says there is a lacuna, there is a gap in the law. Because when they annexed Jerusalem and they applied Israeli law and administration, they did not give them citizens. So what is their status? And the court on its own made a fatwa. They opined that their ruling, their status is that of people who enter Israel under the law of 1955. Even though these people didn't enter Israel, Israel entered to them. So they said their status is similar to those, I guess you would call it, those who have green card in America. They are resident immigrants, but they are not citizens. So as long as they're in the country, they can stay in the country and they can work in the country, but they cannot vote. However, if they leave the country or obtain residency somewhere else, even if they live in the suburbs in Bethlehem or in Ramallah, they're considered to be outside the state of Israel. They are deemed to have abandoned their residency and they no longer have any status.
Well, Jonathan, that's amazing. So you went all the way to their high court to fight this case. You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with an attorney who is also a Mennonite, a fighter for peace through nonviolent means, Jonathan Kuttab, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppet stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah, let's explore.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. You're watching us on Galaxy 19 satellite, as well as muslimnetwork.tv, Amazon Fire TV, as well, Roku, and many other places. Thank you so much for doing so, because we do interesting conversation. Jonathan Kuttab right here talking with us and bringing you information that he is one attorney who is allowed to practice law in Israel, in Palestine, as well as in the state of New York in the United States of America. You took a case all the way to the High Court about a very significant issue for Palestinian, that they are citizens, either they are occupied people in East Jerusalem or they are citizens of Israel. They are not hanging somewhere in La ilaha ulai wa la ilaha ulai. They don't belong anywhere. That's not the situation. Has that become a something in which journals of international law have deliberated upon that particular case? I mean, this is just amazing. That elaborates the whole situation, which you were saying about the inequality of the built-in inequality of a state which claims to be a democratic country.
Yes, I think Israel claims that its situation is unique, that the same rules should not apply to it the same way they apply to everybody else. The idea of exceptionalism, by the way, the United States also sometimes claims that they are not subject to international law. This
they came out of International Criminal Court and things like that.
Yes. I think it is important to emphasize, and we do that all the time in human rights. Human rights, by their very nature, emphasize universalism. The law should be the same for everybody. If torture is wrong, it's wrong, regardless of who is the perpetrator and who is the victim. If it's a nasty person, he shouldn't be tortured. If you're a wonderful person, you shouldn't be allowed to torture. Universalism is the bedrock of human rights law. It also is a very important principle in international law. Israel always tries to say, but we're different. You don't understand our history, the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, the unique nature of our conditions, make us an exception. Anytime anybody claims that they are an exception, that's a red flag. I do a lot of work with human rights worldwide. And every time there's a violation of human rights, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, in Moscow, in Ghana, in South Africa, in the Philippines, in Myanmar, the first thing you hear is, you don't understand, we are different. We are special. Our conditions, as soon as you hear the word, we are special, we are different, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Somebody is trying to
Everyone
get
is
away from
God Almighty has created each one of us different. I mean, I like you very much, but you are very different, brother. And that's why human rights are human rights, because you're human and I'm human. So, how the international law, which so many people want to claim exceptionalism and spatial nature, but there are not many countries like Israel's which are doing whole lot of these things to a total population. I think it's about time Palestinians started claiming that they are very special people. They deserve the equal rights with Jewish people. So tell me how international law is helping or not helping Palestinian cause for equality.
Well, international law definitely helps because it provides a standard that everybody should, in theory, follow. It doesn't help because there are many people who like to violate international law, and they are usually powerful people.
So
And
how international law could be used to go after those people who are powerful and don't want to abide by those rules?
well, I think one way to do it is to strengthen international law everywhere, to refuse to allow exceptions everywhere, to be willing to criticize our own people when they violate international law. You see, if Muslim countries uphold human rights, they have a much better claim to complain when Israel doesn't uphold the rights of Muslims.
Absolutely.
You see, right now, one of the problems of the Muslim world, if I may say
Please,
so as a non-Muslim,
please.
one of the problems of the Muslim world is that many of its own governments and countries are not democratic,
Are tyrants, non-elected,
do not
illegitimate,
follow international law,
oppress people, torture people,
do
and
not
when bad
follow human
guys
rights.
torturing, they are more happy and torture more.
Thank you very much. Right now, for example, China is oppressing Muslims, putting them in concentration camps
Yeah, largest since the Nazis.
by the millions. And the Muslim world itself, or at least the governments in the Muslim world, are quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So when Myanmar also oppresses Muslims, we're largely quiet. We don't speak out. And so when you speak out against Israel, people say you are being hypocritical. Why are you picking on us? Everybody is violating international law everywhere.
Well, but the major difference is that Israel claims to be a democratic country. Many of the other countries, well, some do claim to be democratic, but not all of them claim to be democratic. Israel benefits from the United States based on that particular claim. And no other country came into being because of the Holocaust. So historic experience of the Holocaust magnitude of human rights violations are very unique. So those uniqueness should be used also for human being better. Tell me, you were head of the legal committee negotiating the Cairo Agreement with Israel in 1994, and you were head of that committee, and you probably met with Israeli lawyers and all that. Did you discuss to form some Israeli lawyers and yourself to form a giant firm fighting for equal rights in Israel and Palestine?
Not really. During the negotiations, unfortunately, I have to admit, I was part of the Palestinian delegation. I am not very proud of the results of these negotiations, certainly. But during these negotiations, we were working on a very specific issue, which is an interim arrangement. We were told, we were deceived, obviously, that this was going to be a first step towards a Palestinian statehood, and that this is only a temporary state of affairs. It's an interim agreement. And I was emboldened by this. And I said, look, we want a state, and we want it to be a free, a democratic state. We want equality. We want rights. And they couldn't say no, because I was using their language, their values, their systems. There was one time when I even made a bold statement. They were talking about the systems of education. They say, we don't want there to be incitement in schools. We want there to be teaching people for peace rather than for war. I said, that is wonderful.
Wonderful. Let's have it in both.
Exactly what I want.
Right.
I think we should examine Israeli and Palestinian textbooks.
All right.
I think you should stop training your high school students to prepare them for the army the last 2 years. I said, no. Let's not talk about that. Curriculum, we do our curriculum.
Let's have some falafel.
I want peace. I want an education for peace. I said, I will do something else for you. I am willing to accept any language, any requirement, any provisions in this treaty that we are working on one condition: on the basis of reciprocity and mutuality.
That's part of the sovereign governments. You were asking too much.
I said, I'm willing to accept any conditions, provided you use the same for your own people. And they said, no. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about something else. Let's not talk about that. You see, there is great power when you talk equality. There is great power when you say, I don't want any more than what you want. And this is actually the power behind international law. This is the power behind human rights. If you are willing to use the same standard for everybody, then they cannot argue with them. In Arabic, we say, Man sawaka binafsihi ma zalamak. If I make you my equal, I do not oppress you. I do not do you injustice. Justice is at its very roots equality.
Tell me this. Are these international criminal court? I know that individuals has nothing to do with that, and the International Court of Justice. How Palestinian human rights lawyers and the international lawyers are using these international mechanism to go after not the whole issue of equality, but also the crimes committed against individuals.
Yes, we're doing that very much. One of the things we did at Al-Haq was prepare criminal files against specific Israeli commanders and officers to be presented before the International Criminal Court. And I think Israel is very worried about that. That is why they are asking the United States, and the United States has agreed to put sanctions against the criminal court itself and the judges and the prosecutors and their families. They deny them visas to come to the United States. They threaten to close their accounts. They threaten to go after them in their individual capacity. These are the judges and the prosecutors of the International Criminal Court, because they are afraid. They do not want to be judged. They do not want the International Criminal Courts to rule against them.
So what is the status of those? What case it is, and what's the status of it?
Well, for many years, they tried to prevent the International Criminal Court from even taking jurisdiction. They say, you have no jurisdiction over us. Recently, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court held that, yes, they have jurisdiction to investigate, at least to investigate war crimes underdone by Israel. Right now, Israel is using every means at its disposal to prevent the International Criminal Court from dealing with them.
So the prosecutor asserts that she has right to investigate, but have the judges of the International Criminal Court agreed with the prosecutor that you have this jurisdiction?
Well, yes, they have agreed to it, but Israel is using a number of delaying tactics. One of the tactics they use is self-government. In other words, the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court is a complementary jurisdiction. It means they only have jurisdiction when you cannot obtain justice in your local courts. So Israel is trying to pretend you don't need to try us. We try our own soldiers and generals for what they do.
So they do have a team of lawyers at the International Criminal Court arguing for that.
Yes, they are.
So that's a good step. I like to continue a couple of more questions on that, Jonathan Khattab, after we take this short break. You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with Jonathan Khattab, who is an international human rights lawyer who practices in Israel, Palestine, as well as United States of America, that is New York.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. Past campaigns covered a wide range of humanitarian concerns. Through Bosnia Task Force, imams and leaders of Chicago's Muslim community worked to ensure Bosnia became a top national issue. This led to life-saving American policies in Bosnia. A key accomplishment was helping to get rape declared a war crime. Initiatives also included Kosovo Task Force, Central African Republic Task Force, and Flint Coalition, which brought awareness to the water crisis affecting the people of Flint, Michigan. Highlights of our work include supporting Black Lives Matter, Parliament of the World's Religions, addressing climate change.
So wasteful consumption starts the ruthless production, and that's where we need all the fossil fuel in the world.
And prominent media exposure.
This is Imam Malik Mujahid, President of Justice for All.
And I'm the Director of Outreach for Justice for All.
And that's why we need to go back to what worked.
Today we're demanding an apology from the CEO of Costco.
The Chinese crackdown on Uyghurs and other Turkic people has only gotten worse.
Current programs such as Burma Task Force advocate for the rights of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, internally displaced populations, and all those denied freedom of movement and at risk of starvation. Through this, we mobilized thousands of calls to elected representatives. This paved the way for the U.S. to increase funding for Rohingya refugees from $30 million to over $600 million. 2 of our documentaries were featured on international news outlets. The Rohingya People, A Slow-Burning Genocide on BBC World News, and Rohingya refugees tell of massacre was featured on CNN. We've organized rallies, UN mission visits, expanded presentations on campuses, promoted research and report writing, outreach to think tanks, media, and other influencers. Faith Coalition educates about the Rohingya genocide and crimes against humanity faced by ethnic groups in Burma. We've traveled to refugee camps, convened a meeting of Karen, Kachin, and Rohingya leaders, both to encourage cooperation and to guide them in congressional outreach. We organized Rohingya Advocacy Day. This led to over 100 participants visiting the offices of 60 U.S. senators and congressional representatives. Free Kashmir advocates for the people of Kashmir. Long-term goals include the call for self-determination, the end of the Indian military's occupation of the territory, and raising awareness of Kashmiri issues among the American people. After the August 5th reinvasion of Kashmir, we organized national protests in front of various Indian government buildings, partnered with Stand with Kashmir, and launched a petition condemning the Gates Foundation's decision to present Prime Minister Modi a humanitarian award. Save Uyghur informs Muslims and neighbors of other faiths about the ongoing cultural genocide of Uyghur Muslims and mobilizes public support. Our projects include boycotting Chinese products with our Fast from China campaign, pushing Bill S-178 in the Senate, and organizing a nationwide protest of Costco. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Jonathan Kottab, who is our guest today, who is an international lawyer practicing in the court of Israel, New York State, as well as in Palestine. And I hope that we can bring Jonathan back on the screen, and so we can continue our conversation. It's amazing. He has used international law as well as the laws of the United States, in Israel, to argue that the people which and the territory which Israel occupied in 1967 is, if it is part of Israel, as Israel has declared, then the people living there should become its citizen. And he went to the High Court. Unfortunately, High Court did not give them citizenship. So law is ambiguous. They should have interpreted that law that, yes, these people should be part of it. So we will continue our conversation with Jonathan Kottab, and thank you so much, our producer, for bringing you back. Tell me this. So are Palestinian lawyers representing, International Criminal Court have this provision, whoever case it is, there will be, a lawyer from that country need to be in the bench. So Israelis and Palestinians should have a lawyer sitting as a judge. Is that true?
No. The law does not require that you have a Palestinian judge.
Oh, it does
for
not.
many years, there have been very few.
I see. Oh, no, it is, I think, International Court of Justice, because I saw Myanmar has a person there, and then Gambian have another judge in there. I think it is, I'm confusing between the International Criminal Court versus that. So, but there are jurisdictions, I mean, in Europe, there are, I think, 10, 12 countries which allow universal jurisdiction. So if somebody is wrong, a Palestinian Christian or Palestinian Muslim or a Jew is wronged, they don't even have to be present in this country to pursue the case that they have been wronged in using the universal jurisdiction. Are there some cases like that?
Yes, actually, I need to explain that war crimes and crimes against humanity have universal jurisdiction. They also have no statute of limitations. So you can prosecute somebody for their war crimes 10, 20, 30, 40 years later. This is what they are doing with the Nazis for what they did during World War II. So it's possible to prosecute people in other jurisdictions. However, unfortunately, the politics come in. It's a political process, and it's very difficult to bring those types of cases because there's a very high political cost. I like to think of it in a positive way, which is that there is today increasing respect for international law and human rights. Today, it's harder and harder for people to blatantly violate international law. Today, people all over the world can bring pressure, moral pressure, even economic pressure. This is what the BDS movement does. When the government doesn't act, you can have ordinary people, churches, mosques, unions, students, universities bring pressure on their own government not to be silent when it comes to human rights. I like to take a positive way. I think today we have greater respect for human rights, greater respect for international law, greater acceptance of the principle of equality than any time in previous history. And that's a good thing.
I like you as a positive thinker, but since the Holocaust, the largest concentration camps, as you mentioned, exist in China of Uyghur Muslims, and international law has not done anything. The world public opinion has not done anything because China has trillions of dollars surplus, and they are helping countries all over the world, and they are patronizing or having good relations with all those Muslim or African countries who love to torture and violate. So your hopefulness about the international law is being really respected. A whole lot of people is standing up. Looks like you had too much coffee this morning.
No. Let me explain. It's not something that happens automatically. It is a continuing fight. And I think part of the reason why China, for example, is getting away with it is because the Muslim countries are not sufficiently democratic, are not sufficiently open, are not sufficiently respecting international law themselves.
But yes, there are 57 Muslim countries, but there are 200 countries around the world.
Yes.
It has stopped Christians to be more active in human rights.
I think that China will have to pay a price sooner or later. One of the reasons it is getting away with it is because we don't have enough information. They have succeeded in keeping it quiet. But as more information comes out, I think China itself will be under a lot of pressure to do something about those concentration camps.
So let's go back to Palestine, because you're from there, you're Palestinian, you're an expert on these things. I don't know any other cause in America on which there are so many organizations and so many people focused for the right of Palestinian. Every mosque which I go to, all my interfaith partners, of course, including the Jewish partners who are reluctant in support, are those who are peacemakers who are more than willing to help. But the knowledge and education on this issue has not helped move international law in its favor. We have not succeeded in persuading our government. They have just passed the resolution, as you know, against the movement which you are part of, the boycott and divestment movement. And there are, overwhelming number. I think 5 voted present and 15 voted no. That's all in the whole House of Representatives. So what have we gained?
You know, this is always a question in any struggle. It looks like it is impossible. It looks like the powerful are in control. If I can be theological about this for a minute, a believing person knows that God is greater than all those oppressors, than all those dictators, than all those who appear to be rich and powerful. This was the case with South Africa. The South African regime, apartheid regime, was so powerful. It was supported by all the big countries in the world. It had weapons, it had technology, it had resources, but it collapsed. I think this is always the lesson. I mean, if I can speak, some Muslim once explained to me that the word Allahu Akbar means that God is greater than Washington. He's greater than Netanyahu. He's greater than the army, the police, the banks, the Congress, the oppressors of the world, who seem to be, they don't care about rights. But God is greater than all these things. And we have to maintain the faith that ultimately justice will prevail.
You know, Nelson Mandela, you remind me of Nelson Mandela once said, it always looks impossible until it becomes possible.
Exactly.
And that takes me to Mandela. I mean, I remember him, in his first visit to the United States. It was a great town hall meeting, which a great journalist, Ted Koppel, was moderating. And he very nicely brought him to the level when he wanted him to criticize Yasser Arafat and Palestinian. And I remember, if I remember correctly, Nelson Mandela, who was sitting, he stood up and he says, Yasser Arafat is comrade in arms. Our struggle is their struggle. I mean, everybody was startled. A collapse came very late in that town hall meeting. People clapped very late because people were just taken aback. I don't know what type of audience. You must not be in the audience, otherwise you would have jumped to hug him there. But was there that support just a moral, verbal support, or South Africa under the leadership of Nelson Mandela became a source of financial and material support for PLO?
Definitely. The support of Nelson Mandela was concrete, specific, and genuine. He really believed in the Palestinian cause. He said, we will not be free in South Africa until the Palestinians are free. Our struggle is not over until the Palestinians are free. We get, of course, there was also concrete material support, but the moral support was tremendous. Many people who are in his shoes, in the shoes of Nelson Mandela, would have tried to enjoy being the darling of the West. But he was not willing to compromise his principles. He was not willing to give up the Palestinian cause or Yasser Arafat or the PLO. And to this day, when we started the organization Mandela Institute for Political Prisoners, he was still in jail. But for us, he was an inspiration. He was an inspiration of somebody who had faith in the ultimate success of a just cause.
Now, tell me this. Are the current South African policies are equally as good towards Palestinian as when Nelson Mandela was there?
Not really. There is still support, a lot of support, but I think the state of Israel has put a lot of pressure on the South African government, and sometimes we feel that they are not as supportive. But in the end, they are supportive. In the end, they cannot betray the legacy of Nelson Mandela. So they continue to be supportive, but they are under a lot of pressure to reduce their support for the Palestinian cause.
I'm almost at the end of my show, but Jonathan, I have so many other questions. I mean, you are helping me grow up in knowledge about this whole topic. And, so I'm going to ask you some quick questions and give me one-line answers, because this is the time when we have to close. But what lessons did you learn after negotiating with Israelis in Cairo for 1994 agreement?
I learned that we need to stick to principles, that negotiations usually reflect the power of the different parties. Part of our power is the moral power, the legal power of principle.
Okay. Now, I'm absolutely over time. I think I need to get you again, if you don't mind. But tell me, why Israeli arrest children, Palestinian children? I mean, little babies literally are arrested. Why do they have this thing?
Because they are afraid, and because children represent the future and the hope, and children are the ones who are willing to say what they want and speak their mind, raise the flag, throw the stone, insist on their identity. So they are a threat to Israel.
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan Khattab. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time. And you have been watching. You have been listening to what Jonathan Khattab has to say. All Palestinians are looking for is equality.
Correct.
That's all. Equal rights as we enjoy in the United States. And if when we are not given, we march on the street, we have Black Lives Matter, we have this campaign and that campaign until we are able to achieve that. That's the struggle which Jonathan Khattab is leading as a part of Palestinian struggle. And I like to thank Jonathan Khattab, and I would like to thank Sumaya Heather, Zahra Nadeem, and our supervisor producer, Connor Mays. You have been watching Muslim Network TV, and for a stronger conversation, which will inspire you and educate you, you can always tune us in on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and our own website, muslimnetwork.tv, YouTube and Facebook pages. Thank you. Stay tuned. Keep watching. Peace. Salam.